This video is brought to you by Swedish Pod 101. Pod 101 courses are one of my favorite ways to start learning a new language online. Click the link in the description for a free lifetime account to give it a try. Hello everyone, welcome to the Langfocus channel, and my name is Paul. Today we're going to focus on the Swedish language.
Det svenska språket.
In Swedish, or just
Svenska.
Swedish is spoken by around 10 million people, mainly in Sweden, where it's the native language of around 8 million people, and also in Finland, where it's the second official language after Finnish, with around 270,000 native speakers. It's a continental North Germanic language which is closely related to Norwegian and Danish, and is mutually intelligible with them to some extent, the degree depending on the dialects in question. Like all North Germanic languages, Swedish is a descendant of Old Norse, which developed from Proto-Germanic by the 8th century. Over the next 600 years or so, Old Norse developed into the various North Germanic languages of today. Old Norse first diverged into Old West Norse in Norway, Iceland, and the Faroe Islands, and Old East Norse in Sweden and Denmark. Old East Norse then divided into Old Danish and Old Swedish by around the 13th century. Old East Norse is sometimes referred to as Runic Swedish and Runic Danish, even though they were basically the same until around the year 1100. This name comes from the fact that it was written in the Runic alphabet, specifically the Younger Futhark alphabet. The Latin alphabet was adopted in Sweden around 1225 due to the Christianization of Sweden, and this marks the beginning of the Old Swedish period. Later that century, the Hanseatic League began to arise. It was an alliance of Middle Low German-speaking trade communities spread out across the Baltic region and Scandinavia, including the major cities of Sweden. Through its domination of trade over the next several centuries, and through the settlement of aristocratic families from what is now northern Germany, Middle Low German had a significant impact on the vocabulary of Swedish. Swedish also became simpler in its grammar as it developed from Old Swedish to modern Swedish. It originally had a more complex case system, 4 cases rather than the current 2 cases, 3 genders rather than the current 2 genders, and a more complex verb system. The printing press and the publishing of a Swedish Bible in the 16th century, the Gustav Vasa Bible, marked the beginning of the modern Swedish period. The Gustav Vasa Bible was a major step towards more standardized orthography. But it wasn't until the 19th and 20th centuries that Swedish became more uniform due to migration and urbanization, and a standard language was created. By the time of the spelling reform of 1906, Swedish was almost the same as the contemporary Swedish in use today. Today, Standard Swedish dominates throughout Sweden in general, and most people are fluent in it. Regional dialects are still widely spoken, though they are not quite as distinct as they once were because of the influence of Standard Swedish. The main dialectal difference today lies in accent. Let's examine some of the features of Swedish, focusing on Standard Swedish. There are 29 letters in the Swedish alphabet, 9 of them vowel letters and 20 of them consonant letters. But those letters represent more than 29 distinct phonemes. The vowel letters represent pairs of short vowels and long vowels, with short vowels appearing before a long consonant, that means 2 or more consonants, and long vowels appearing before a short consonant, meaning a single consonant, or before a vowel or at the end of a word. In most cases, the long and short vowels are also different in quality, not only length. For example, this word has a long vowel,
Glas.
and it means glass. This word has a short A vowel,
Glass.
and it means ice cream. This word has a long vowel,
Bot.
and it means cure. This word has a short vowel,
Bot.
and it means stayed. Standard Swedish has no phonemic diphthongs, though some dialects, such as the Scanian dialects of southern Sweden, do. Some consonant sounds are represented by digraphs. These digraphs all represent the sound y, as does the letter J, as well as G before front vowels. These digraphs all represent the sound ch, as does sk before front vowels. Otherwise it's pronounced sk. These digraphs represent sh, as does k before front vowels. Otherwise it's pronounced k. And sometimes ch, which is used in loanwords. This digraph represents gn at the beginning of words and n in other contexts. This digraph represents ng or ng. And these digraphs represent retroflex consonants, the retroflex element being shown by the R in each digraph. The standard sound represented by R is a voiced alveolar trill, and in some words an alveolar tap. But this is one sound that differs depending on the dialect, with some southern dialects of Swedish pronouncing it as a uvular trill, or as a voiceless or voiced uvular fricative. The letter G is normally either pronounced G, like a hard G, or Y before front vowels. It's never pronounced J, like the soft G in English. Like Norwegian, Swedish has pitch accent, a shift in tone on the stressed syllable. Like in Norwegian, there are two tone patterns. Tone 1 is a rising tone. The pitch rises on the stressed syllable, then falls on the unstressed syllable that follows. Tone 2 is a falling, rising, falling tone. The pitch falls on the stressed syllable, then rises and falls again on the unstressed syllable that follows. Many pairs of words can be distinguished based on their pitch accent. Here's an example. In tone 1,
boken,
meaning the book, and in tone 2,
boken,
meaning overripe or spoiled, regarding fruit. Tone 2 normally appears in words with multiple syllables and inflection, aside from the definite article. Tone 1 normally appears in words with only one syllable and words with the definite article attached. The N in boken is a definite article.
Jag läste boken.
This means I read the book. Word for word it's I read book the. Swedish word order is SVO as in English, the only difference here being the placement of the definite article. The definite article takes the form of a suffix in Swedish, and its form depends on the gender and number of the noun. Modern Swedish, at least in its standard form, has two genders, common gender and neuter gender. For singular common gender nouns, the definite article is usually N or N after a vowel.
Boken.
The definite article for singular neuter nouns is et or t.
Stället.
However, the final T is usually silent in most accents. Unlike the definite article, the indefinite article comes before the noun. N for common nouns.
En bok.
And et for neuter nouns.
Ett ställe.
How about for plural nouns? Indefinite plural nouns are formed by adding indefinite suffixes, which differ depending on the noun's ending.
Böcker.
Books.
Ställen.
Places. For plural definite nouns in the common gender, you add na to the indefinite plural.
Böckerna.
The books. For plural definite nouns in the neuter gender, you add a to those ending in a vowel, and you add n to those ending in a consonant.
Ställena.
The places.
Han dricker inte kaffe.
This means he doesn't drink coffee. Word for word it's he drink not coffee. Again, this sentence is SVO with one difference from English syntax. The negation marker, inte, comes after the verb rather than before it. And also, notice that while English has the auxiliary verb do, here in the form doesn't, Swedish has no equivalent of that. If we make the sentence affirmative, it shares the same syntax as its English translation.
Han dricker kaffe.
He drinks coffee. Han is the third-person singular personal pronoun. Swedish has a system of personal pronouns similar to that of English, with a couple of differences. There are second-person plural pronouns, which are also used as formal second-person singular pronouns. There are also two equivalents of it in English, one for common gender, den, and one for neuter, de. And there is also a controversial gender-neutral pronoun, hen. This is not a pronoun that arose naturally in Swedish, but it was constructed in order to replace the use of masculine pronouns in contexts when you are not specifically referring to a man or a woman. You know, in English I might use he or she in such a context. Some people accept this pronoun and others reject it. It isn't widely used in speech, but it's sometimes used in writing and on TV.
Dricker han kaffe?
Does he drink coffee?
Ja, det gör han.
Yes, he does. As you can see from this question, in Swedish it's very simple to form a yes or no question. You simply move the verb to the front of the sentence.
Dricker han öl?
Does he drink beer? Öl is a cognate of the English word ale.
Nej, det gör han inte.
No, he doesn't. The most common way to answer yes or no questions is to first say ja or nej, followed by de, then a verb, followed by the pronoun, then the negation marker, inte, if it's negative. In many cases, the verb is a form of
göra,
which means do. For each verb tense, there is only one form of the verb. It doesn't change depending on who or how many people are speaking. So in the present tense, it's
jag gör,
I do,
du gör,
you do,
han gör,
he does, etc. In the past tense, it's
jag gjorde,
I did,
du gjorde,
You did.
Han gjorde.
He did, etc. In the future it's
Jag ska göra.
I will do.
Du ska göra.
You will do.
Han ska göra.
He will do, etc. Obviously, this makes verbs easier to use than in many other languages.
Jag har aldrig varit i Norge.
I've never been to Norway. Word for word it's I have never been in Norway. This is almost word for word the same as the English sentence, except that E translates as in rather than to. This sentence features the present perfect, which is formed in a similar way to its English equivalent. Notice that I said similar, not the same. Here we have the auxiliary verb, the present form of the verb ha, which means have. Over here, we have a form of the verb
Vara.
meaning be. In English, we use the past participle, but in Swedish, it's a different form called the supine. And there's a different past participle form for other uses. Notice also that the adverb
Aldrig.
comes between the two verbs.
Varför inte?
Why not?
Varför?
Means why, and is a cognate of the archaic English word wherefore, which you may know from Romeo and Juliet. Wherefore art thou, Romeo? Which doesn't mean where are you, Romeo, like most people think it does. It means why are you Romeo? As in, why can't you be from a different family? But I digress.
Öl är dyrare i Norge än i Sverige.
Beer is more expensive in Norway than in Sweden. Word for word it's, beer is more expensive in Norway than in Sweden. It almost translates directly into English, except for the way the comparative is expressed. In English, there are two comparative forms. First, with the er suffix, and second, with more before the adjective, with most two-syllable adjectives and all adjectives with 3 or more syllables. In Swedish, it's similar, with single-syllable adjectives taking the suffix are, and adjectives with 2 or more syllables being preceded by
Mer.
In this case, the English word expensive has 3 syllables, so it uses more, while the Swedish word
Dyr.
has only 1 syllable, so it takes the are ending. One more thing to note here is the verb
Är.
It is the present tense conjugation of the verb
Vara.
meaning to be. Vara is the infinitive form. It developed from Old Norse vesa, then it became vera, then it became
Vara.
The English verb to be, in all its different conjugations, developed from 2 different verbs, Old English beon and Old English wesan, which is cognate with the Swedish word.
Bara öl? Nej, allt.
Superlatives.
Vilken är Sveriges största stad?
What's the biggest city in Sweden? Word for word it's, which is Sweden's biggest city? Here we have the question word vilken, meaning which. Next we see
Sveriges.
As I mentioned earlier, Swedish used to have 4 cases, but now it only has 2, the nominative and the genitive, which is shown with an S at the end of the noun, similar to how apostrophe S is used in English to show possession. Next
Största.
is the superlative form of
Stor.
which means big. Just like Swedish has comparative forms that partly resemble the English ones, in this case,
Större.
bigger, it also has a superlative form that partly resembles the English one. Sta is like the est ending in English. But this one might not be the best example, come to think of it, because it's irregular. Most single-syllable adjectives take the ending ast or aste, like
Dyr. Dyraste.
most expensive. The form with the e at the end, aste, is used when the adjective is definite, particularly when preceded by a definite article or genitive pronoun. Multisyllable adjectives form the superlative when mest comes before them, like English most. Most intelligent would be.
Mest intelligent.
The rules about single-syllable words and multisyllable words are not 100%. In fact, this word could also be said with ast rather than mest. But the rule is generally true.
Sveriges största stad är Stockholm.
The biggest city in Sweden is Stockholm. Word for word, Sweden's biggest city is Stockholm.
Göteborg är inte lika stort som Stockholm.
Gothenburg isn't as big as Stockholm. Word for word it's, Gothenburg is not like big as Stockholm. Comparisons of equality are formed in Swedish by using
Lika
plus an adjective, followed by
som.
literally equal adjective as.
Lika.
Is a cognate of English like in its use as an adverb.
Du är lika lång som Ella.
You are as tall as Ella. Word for word, you are equally tall as Ella. You may be getting the sense that Swedish is quite similar to English in its grammar and to some extent in its Germanic vocabulary, English-speaking learners of Swedish are often struck by just how similar the two are, and by how intuitive Swedish is for them. The bigger challenges in learning Swedish seem to lie in the pronunciation in the early stages, and in getting used to dialectal variation and different accents in the later stages. But all in all, people who learn Swedish overwhelmingly enjoy the process, and their efforts are well rewarded. The question of the day. For speakers of Swedish, to what extent would you say that you speak standard Swedish, and to what extent do you use your local dialect? And to people who have studied Swedish, what has your experience been like? What have you found easy, and what have you found challenging? If you're excited to learn more Swedish, then click the link in the description to visit SwedishPod 101, or visit langfocus.com/SwedishPod. It's one of the most extensive Swedish courses I've ever seen, with literally hundreds of lessons for learners of any level, and the lessons get progressively more challenging as your level improves. As the name suggests, they're podcast-based lessons, which is great for people who like to learn using audio materials, and for people who want to learn on the go. These days I try to focus much more on audio materials than I used to, so that I can repeat new words and phrases to improve my pronunciation, and at a more advanced level I shadow entire dialogues or monologues. But Pod 101 courses offer more than just audio lessons. They have lots of video lessons, as well as downloadable books and PDF materials, so that you can get visual input and explanations of all the language introduced in the lessons. They also have audio recordings of the individual words and phrases, so you can review them individually, and you can create vocabulary flashcards that use spaced repetitions to help you memorize the words more easily. They also offer quizzes to help you review the lessons, word lists of the most commonly used words, and other features. Now, the biggest problem most learners seem to have with innovative language courses is that the lessons are short, so they make the mistake of breezing through them too quickly and moving on to the next lesson. But I really recommend that you slow down and you practice what you learn in each lesson before moving on to the next one. You can listen to the lesson multiple times, review the lesson transcript and notes, use the flashcards, and test yourself, either by yourself or using the system's built-in quizzes. That's where the real learning takes place, when you reinforce and review what you've learned. I've never learned a language using only innovative language courses, but I'm a member of several of their sites and I regularly use them as part of my study program. Lots of content is free, including all new lessons which are free for the first couple of weeks. And then if you want to access all the content, you can upgrade to a paid account. I really recommend you check out Innovative Languages courses, whether for Swedish or one of the other 33 languages they offer. Click the link in the description to get a free lifetime account. I also want to give a big shout out to all the LangFocus Patreon supporters, especially the top tier patrons whose names are on the screen. Check out patreon.com/langfocus and check out the benefits of the various tiers. And to everyone, thank you for watching and have a nice day.